Welcome to another episode of the Self-Publishing Corner, where writers can listen to my experiences as a self-published author, get writing tips, and helpful resources. I'm author Cheryl Bannerman, your host, and today I have a special guest, Tyler Tarter, author of the Roots of Conviction series. Tyler grew up throughout the Western United States. After a few years of living in Brazil and on the East Coast, he pursued his two loves, writing and technology. He currently spends his days working in the IT and cybersecurity field and his nights typing away at his laptop. He currently lives in Springfield, Utah, and is an active member of both the League of Utah Writers and Wolf Moon's Wolf Pack. Tyler spends his free time with his puppy Rex. Welcome, Tyler.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
So you have to tell me, what type of dog or breed is Rex?
He's mostly an English bulldog. He has a little bit of boxer in him, so he's got a little bit longer face than a normal English bulldog, but pretty much everything else is the same.
And what color?
Black and white.
Oh, adorable.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. You sound like you're doing a lot. So I thank you for taking time out to be here today, and congratulations on the Roots of Conviction series.
Yeah, thank you. It's been keeping me busy for sure.
Well, I'm just going to jump right in. I happened to take a peek on Amazon at your categories, and I noticed that they were listed in the coming of age fantasy and sword and sorcery fantasy genres on Amazon. How did you get interested in this genre? It's so unique.
Honestly, it's a genre that I've been reading most of my life. It's something my mom has always enjoyed reading as well. So growing up, that was what we read: is sword and sorcery, some epic fantasy, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of been part of me since as long as I can remember.
So that was your inspiration for the series, like how you grew up and what you were encouraged to read?
Partially, yeah. I've been reading a lot of it, but I had recently got into some family history stuff. My family is from all over. My dad's side is Tatar, so Mongolian that descended in or that live in Europe now,
Oh, wow.
and they have a lot of really cool stories. And I wanted to represent that part of me
Oh,
instead of
wow.
just the more traditional European blood that I have as well. So one of the two main characters is from a nation that I based heavily on that, as well as the other main character has a lot of Greek and Indian roots as well that I have in my family as well that I wanted to include.
Oh, that's fascinating. And you learned about this later in life?
Yeah, because of the way my family's history worked, they ended up in the United States right after during the American Revolution, and from that point on, they became very traditional American, and a lot of that heritage had been lost. So it actually took me probably 5 or 6 years to even figure out a lot of where our family had come from pre 1776 and stuff like that. So when I found it and found all these amazing stories, I realized that with a little tweak and a little magic, they would make really, really good books. So
Well,
I
you
started
were
writing
right.
it.
You were absolutely right, because the worlds that you create in your books are fascinating. They're so descriptive. Do you have a process for creating these worlds?
Kind of. For this one, or for this series in particular, I went through my family history and picked out different nationalities
Mm.
and then blended two of them together to make the new nation. Um,
Oh, wow.
but a lot of the world building itself, living in Utah, I'm
Mhm,
heavily influenced by Brandon Sanderson.
mhm.
He lives probably 5 minutes from the office I work in. So
Oh,
I've been able to attend a lot of his classes, seminars, conferences, and as kind of the current reigning king of world building, it has influenced me a lot. Same with the magic system in the books.
wow. So it's basically like a master class right in your backyard.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the big perks for being a writer here in Utah. We have probably 4 or 5 major conferences a year of writers with hundreds of authors from around here in pretty much any genre you can imagine. The League of Utah Writers is a great combination of this as well. So it's been really, really nice to have that kind of support here.
I think a lot of writers are going to be taking a cue from you and looking them up for sure.
Definitely.
How much research is going into these descriptions that you have? It's almost like I'm in the world, like as I'm reading. So I can, the way you describe their dress and the soldiers and the battles, it's just very descriptive. How much research goes into this?
A lot. It probably took me 3 years roughly to write the first book. And probably a year of that time was research and development. The other 2 books came a lot faster once I had those in place.
Yes.
With actually the final book in the trilogy coming out in November.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I have to stop and just talk about that for a second. I really admire and praise authors. I do the same thing myself, who take the time to do what's necessary to put out a really good book, right? If it takes 3 years, then so be it, because it's
absolutely.
going to be amazing and it's going to be accurate and it's going to be good writing and it's edited properly and it really makes a difference, and I just say hats off to you.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Going through the actual work to put out a good story is absolutely worth it. It may seem odious at times, but the final product is always worth it.
Absolutely. Now, I have to ask, because I do a lot of dialogue. I have a cozy mystery series and I do a lot of dialogue. I look at your book. You don't use a lot of dialogue and you use it very sparingly, but yet I still feel like I'm encompassed into the scene. It's amazing. What is
Yeah,
your secret?
for me, I've always been a big believer that body language is actually the majority of dialogue. So a lot of the description I do is body language, facial expressions, things like that, that allows characters to say a lot while only saying a little. Especially I have a couple very stoic characters that they're the type of people who, well, kind of like me, that don't say a lot of words to say things.
That's smart.
So yeah, I lean heavily into describing body language, posture, facial expressions, things like that to convey a large part of the dialogue.
Okay, there's another writing tip for you writers. So look up those descriptors for body language and improve your writing if you'd like to use less dialogue. Awesome. You have used the term, please, I hope I say this right, genre bending.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot with a very small group of authors, where you take tropes and situations that are almost overused in one genre and then you stick them in a different genre. So, for example, trying to think of a good one I have in the Roots of Conviction series. Well, one of the 2 main characters, Ravi, she grows up in a very she's a princess, but her society is very based around secrets.
Okay.
So she carries a lot of secrets, and she's actually a skilled assassin, which is
Wow.
a very common trope for politicians and nobility in science fiction
Okay.
and more modern fiction.
Okay.
But you don't see it a lot in fantasy. So I wanted to carry that over into fantasy, where in fantasy it's very unique and it'll stand out,
Hmm.
while I can still follow a lot of the same rules and tropes that are almost overused in science fiction. I've done the reverse in a lot of other stories I've written, where I'll carry fantasy tropes into science fiction, or horror tropes into romance, or
Oh,
everything
wow.
like that. It makes for a lot of fun stories without having to overthink things. It gives you less pressure to be unique. I guess the best way to do it, or best way to explain it.
I my mind is spinning right now. I'm thinking about all these different things, like because I'm a multi-genre
Mhm.
author. I'm thinking of all these different ways to do that with my books. That is really fascinating. I have to do some research on that.
Yeah,
Readers,
definitely.
you might be in for a surprise with my next book. I don't know.
It's always fun.
Paranormal,
Yeah.
cozy mystery. Wow, that is so cool.
Mhm.
Well, I have to ask, everyone's probably going to beat me up if I don't ask you. Do you have any advice for an indie author who wants to write in this genre, but has no clue how to go about it as wonderfully as you have with your 3 years of research?
Um, the big thing I would suggest is, if you have a story idea, write it. It may
Hmm.
or may not be good,
Hmm.
at least in the beginning, but always start.
Yeah,
If you never start, you'll never finish.
true.
Um, and then while you're writing, get on social media early. It's something that's changed a lot in the writing industry lately.
Okay.
And for me, I actually published for the first time in April 2020, which, as you're sure you're aware, was a very, very messy time.
Yeah,
And the rules of publishing kind of went out the window.
yeah.
But I've had a lot of success in the last couple of years getting involved heavily on social media, sharing
Okay.
character ideas,
I see.
stories. Doing that draws your audience. And recently, there's been a lot of people who actually enjoy hearing about a book before it comes out, and
Makes
hearing the
sense.
author talk about everything, their writing process, character development, even asking their audience questions about what they think about this idea versus this idea. It has worked out very well for some of my friends. And I've seen quite a bit of success over the last probably year that I've gotten involved in more social media platforms than just Facebook.
So build your platform as you're writing.
Definitely.
Ask the people who follow you questions. Are you asking them for to evaluate stuff, like asking their opinion?
Yeah, you can do that. You can do uh, one of my favorites to do that always seems to get the best results, is how this character would be defined. So I'll
Mhm.
do well, the one I'm going to start next week is, what D&D class would this character be?
Okay.
Um, I just finished one. For me, in my writing process, when I'm writing, I almost see the story in my mind as like a movie. So I'll
Yep.
actually go and cast my characters as
Mhm.
actors. So I decided to ask everybody who they thought would be cast for those actors. And that was really fun to see.
That's a great question. I love it.
Yeah, there were actually several that surprised me. A lot of people saw the characters very differently than I do, which is
Yes.
fine. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, but it was kind of cool to see who my readers thought would actually play those roles better. So
That's a great question. You are giving me so many ideas. That's a great end note to end our podcast today. I have to just thank you again for stopping by. Writers, if you are interested in finding out more about Tyler Tarter, please go to his website, www.tyler, Tyler, Tarter, TARTER.com, and follow him on Instagram at Tyler Tarter. Thank you so much for stopping by.
I enjoyed this a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Until next time, writers, signing off.